took Mex 4 years, but he's finally come up with something interesting to me. That was in strength of schedule. You know, we said our strength of schedule is always good, but it doesn't seem to get the credit. But today, you know, our strength of schedule was one amongst Power 5 schools. What happens is the schools that are smaller, that play schools like us to raise money, always have a higher strength of schedule. So we're 9th overall, but we're number 1 amongst major colleges, which I think is significant. I think starting up conference play this week, there's been a lot of regular season games, and we've played against a lot of different kinds of teams. So I'm looking forward to getting a couple good practices in for the Minnesota game, because now we kind of have a little better feel, although of all the teams, we'll have the least feel about Minnesota. They got, I think, 6 new guys, 4 of them start. But our schedule has been challenging. It put us in a situation where we had to do a lot of different things, from presses to zones to different situations, winning games down the stretch. I think that's going to help. We had a really good first half against Toledo, and did some things where I thought we played as good a half as we played, other than maybe Baylor against a quality team, some of the UConn game. But it's just getting that consistency now, and if we can get the consistency throughout a full game, I think we're going to be a much, much, much better team. As far as Minnesota is concerned, Ben Johnson's a kid I recruited a little bit. I know Ben pretty well. I think he's done a hell of a job there. He's taken, he's got, I think, more seniors than a senior citizen home. You know, he's got a lot of elderly players on his team with a lot of experience, including some that have been there and came back after they transferred out. They're shooting the ball extremely well. They're mixing the 4 or 5 transfers. If there's a problem right now, it's depth. They don't have great depth, but unbelievable the job I think he's done. He'd be my preseason before the Big Ten Coach of the Year. Coming off a big win at Mississippi State. They've won 2 games on the road, at Pittsburgh, at Mississippi State. They're one of 12 undefeated teams in the country. That's a big deal. And the 2 guys, Battle and Willis, have just shot the lights out of the ball. They're shooting in the high 40s. One of them, they got 2 guards shooting 48 and 46%. Battle isn't shooting quite as well, but he's made a bunch of shots. So we're going to be challenged. I think everybody looked at this game maybe a month ago and said, well, Minnesota's probably lost a lot. Now they're sitting there as one of 12 undefeated teams, playing, you know, yeah, some parts of their schedule weren't as good, but the last week, 2 weeks playing, you know, at Pittsburgh and at Mississippi State tells you that they're for real. And so after the embarrassment of last year, one of the worst defeats in my era, I guess we're looking forward to it.
Questions? Tom, what do you like ahead of the conference schedule from your young guys, and what are some things that you're hoping to see maybe in terms of improvement from them?
Well, what I like is I think we've been way better defensively, especially when I look at young guys being Max has been unbelievable defensively, and Jaden is not far behind. I've loved Jaden's ability to offensive rebound, run his lane. He brings a lot of energy to us. I think, you know, I guess I'll call Tyson a new guy. Or, you know, he's now starting to play a lot better and starting to get acclimated. And Pierre is starting to play more too. So we are playing 3 freshman wings at some point in time, 2 of them a lot, and been really pleased with them defensively. And I still think that offense will come. So we got some things to work on there. I think Tyson has done a good job taking those turnovers down. done a better job of getting people involved. He is a very good defender. He'll be challenged this week by a bigger guard. So, I am pleased with our freshmen and our new guys a lot. I just think we have to, it comes down to those turnovers and shoot a little better.
Tom, where is Malik in terms of health and everything? You can see him sort of grabbing that ankle a little bit in the last game. Where is he?
I think he's a lot better now. You're right, the last game, he's been a little bit ginger on it, but yesterday all we did was walk through and shoot, so I'll know more today, but it doesn't seem to be bothering him. The report is that it's good to go now. It was a sprained ankle. It took a few days. I don't see any repercussions or any problems with it, to be honest with you.
Tom, Max always wants to have a perfect game, and I know you mentioned after Saturday's game that you kind of have to talk to him about that in a sense that it's not going to be that way every single time. But going off of that, how do you kind of help him through it now that Big Ten play starts, because it's going to get tougher for him in that aspect?
Well, the great part about Max is he's such a hard worker that he's come in. We've sat down and watched film. He's watched film. He's been in shooting. It's amazing that for the most part, a few offensive struggles, which, God, I look at the top freshmen throughout the country, a lot of guys are going through the same thing. It hasn't affected his defense. And that's what's really amazing, because when the offense comes, I think it's going to enhance his defense even more, and that's going to be pretty cool, to be honest with you. So I'm just trying to stay as positive as I can, trying to tell him when he's taking bad shots and when he's taking good shots. And I think most of the time he's been taking good shots, but Max is used to being able to get shots off against anybody, which he can. But sometimes when you're in a little bit of a mini slump, you got to get even a better shot, to be honest with you. So I got no problem with the way Max has played. I just know that he would like to, and I would like him to shoot a hair better.
Tom, we talk about consistency, turnovers, some guys not shooting the way you'd expect at this point. Is a lot of those things just part of kind of getting in the flow of the season? And I know you don't want to take too much time. At some point it's got to get going. But is that all kind of together?
Yeah, it's all part of the process, to be honest with you, especially with a completely new perimeter. That perimeter, Gabe played here, but, and AJ didn't play much. And Gabe played here a little bit more, but it was a completely different group of people around him. So if you look at most of our perimeter, it's all new and young and inexperienced if they're not new. And so I think that does take a little bit of time, but we've really, if you took away the ridiculous turnovers, and I think after today I'm going to quit talking about them, but they've affected you in so many ways. They're depressing for the player, they're depressing for the team, depressing for the staff. So if you took that away, we'd be averaging 7-8 more points a game. We'd be in the 80s for sure, and probably feeling a little bit better about ourselves. The nice thing is, without shooting great, without making some crazy turnovers, we've still found a way to keep our defensive numbers really low, and we found ways to win. And so I think if you can now add the things that are we going to be a high turnover team? I hope not. Are we going to get down to 7 or 8? Probably not. But if we could get to 11 or 12 instead of 17, 18, which is very realistic, that's 5-6 more opportunities a game, which will really change, and not as depressing to just step out of bounds. Hey, that dog fence worked. If you guys need any help with your kids not crossing the street or something, let me know.
Chris, you mentioned the other day about being, I don't know, embarrassed was the word you used, but frustrated with what the defense was like a year ago. What was it that you felt maybe needed to change the most?
Well, I think whenever your defense isn't good, I think the best thing that needs to change is the coach. And I really mean that. That is what we've been here. That is the culture here, that we defend, rebound, and run. And it couldn't have been what I did a good enough job of. No, remember, it's COVID, and we all got all our built-in excuses, but I take sole responsibility. That's why starting in the summer, I said that's going to change, and so I talked about in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, and I think our defense has been as good as it needs to be. I talked to Todd after the game. He thought we were one of the best defensive teams he's played against, and I thought the second half we let up. Over the last couple of years. Whether that'll continue now as the offenses get even better, we'll see. But I do think, personnel makes maybe somewhat of a difference. But, and remember, we're playing with Josh a little bit laid up most of the year and trying to play him more minutes. We were in and out with our points. I'm not doing it for humility. I definitely think that one falls on the head coach. And so I took it. I'm not going to be embarrassed anymore.
Was it more of an all-inclusive thing, out front, pressure on the ball with wings and the post, or was there any one thing that was...
That's a good question I haven't answered. I just think there was a lackadaisical approach. And maybe we were playing so many people. Like, playing 9 people is one thing, but playing 9 where you have 4 different starters, Kip, you're starting, somebody else is starting, Brock starting, AJ starting, Foster starting. You think about what we did, and that's why I looked in the mirror. And I normally don't like what I see, but I really didn't like what I see then. And that's why I said, I'm not blaming a player for that. I'm blaming maybe my approach or maybe the way we had to substitute. I don't think we're putting any more pressure on the ball. I think we've just taken a more concerted, like Max, he holds the 2 leading scorers in the last 2 games down. And, one guy didn't score a point. And the last game, he was on Rollins more than a little. He gets 22 points, but he's 7 for 23 or something, So we thought the job that he's been doing has been better. Gabe's a little better. And I think Tyson's is a lot better, than what we had. And I do think AJ's improved some. Mark is starting to block some shots, a little more consistency inside. It's just a combination of things.
Hey, Tom, is there any extra layer of challenge or difficulty when your first 2 Big Ten games are against the 2 new coaches or 2 of the new coaches in the league?
Yeah, it is, because I don't know who Minnesota has. I don't know what their schemes are. It's completely different setup, completely different players. So that is a little tougher. But I think my staff's done a good job. We've kind of put even more prep time in. Yesterday was a long, long day to try to make sure that we uncovered everything that we needed to uncover. But it presents a little more of a problem. Like I was telling you last week, it seems like we're now putting where their transfers and what their stats were last year. Well, we got 5-6 guys. We got to do that on this year. So it's like you're watching tape of last year's games. You're watching this year's games. It's made it a little more difficult, especially with almost a completely new team but a completely new coach. Good point.
Too, on starting the conference schedule, it's a marathon, it's a war. It starts Wednesday, it goes to March 6th. I think 4 of your first 5 are on the road. Do your young players realize the different level it may take to succeed at this level? And what is the general excitement level of starting a conference season?
They all know they don't realize it, and they're going to realize it. They don't. And one of the problems is when leadership is so important in things like this. When you get on a plane to travel to Minnesota, somebody should be saying, hey, we got the elevated floor, we got this, the place is going to be rocking, and telling our younger guys what to expect so they don't get it when they walk on the floor. And that's the one problem with so much movement now, is that everybody's running into the same problems. So I think never is there a freshman that is prepared for Big Ten season. And there's not another conference, has been stated, for over 40 years. I think we've led the league in attendance, where the venues are as crazy as there is in ours. Some are at places, but not a steady diet of it. And you're right, it is a grind. It is a long season. By starting it earlier, it's got some pluses, but even makes it more difficult because you've got to be ready to go for us on Wednesday.
Tom, what you've seen in the Big Ten, Purdue and everybody else, from what you've seen at this point, you got to give your assessment of the league.
Well, I said all along, I thought Purdue was better than they were getting talked about, and they were getting ranked high. I just felt like when you can take a couple starters and put them on the bench, and you know, and just because other guys have either gotten better, or I think Matt's done an incredible job of figuring out what's best for his team. You know, like I did with Morris. You know, sometimes your best player can come off the bench, or one of your best players. So I think they've done a great job as a staff. I think they're shooting the ball extremely well. They got size. As I said, they're Noah's Ark, you know. Whatever he ordered two of. And he's got that. And so that puts him there. You know, the other teams that were ranked so high, Michigan, Illinois. Illinois had a lot of injuries and suspensions. You know, Michigan's trying to learn how to play with their players, and they got a new quarterback too, and that makes a difference. Iowa's been a little bit of a surprise team, I think, on a positive side of things. And then after that, you know, Ohio State, I do think is very solid. Wisconsin's been a little bit of a surprise team too. But, you know, like Wisconsin, Iowa, even Purdue sometimes used to be Michigan State. When you got players that are redshirted and they might not have stats, but they played in the system, you know, and played behind people. Baylor's done an unbelievable job of that right now. Then you have a more polished guy, even though he might only be a sophomore and doesn't have a lot of stats because he's been through the process. And I think you're seeing that with a couple of those teams. And they've, you know, those guards at Iowa have been there forever. Then you got Bohannon, who's a sixth-year guy, you know. That makes a big difference. So, you know, what's going to be the case? Am I surprised at Minnesota? I really am. I mean, done a hell of a job, and they're 7-0 legit. And then Penn State, I watched them play Ohio State for a half last night. I think he's one of the great new coaches we got in the league. Who knows what's going to happen at Maryland? Nebraska's had a bunch of injuries, including one of their best players out for the season, I think. So injuries and situations are going to determine a lot of things, but I think the top still looks pretty similar. I think Michigan will get better as they play with their guys. I think Illinois, as they get their guys back, will get better. I think Ohio State and teams like ours are the teams that are real solid in which way we're going to go up or down. Any other question on that? I mean, do you want something specific? I don't know.
No, that's a good assessment. That's just sort of your feel for things.
Yeah.
Like that.
Thanks.
You mentioned that strength of schedule meant your highest among power teams. What does that do for a team kind of in the Big Ten play? And is it especially helpful with the younger guys that are there?
No. I think it's helpful for the team, not helpful for the younger guys. If we were playing a bunch of games like some teams have played, Jim Boeheim always told me something that I really do agree with now. I didn't then, remember when he wasn't playing the toughest schedules, but what you have then is you have players that can play through a bunch of mistakes. You can have players that can get shots and there's not as much pressure on them, especially for the younger guys. You can play all your people so nobody's complaining. So the tougher schedule is harder on freshmen. But I still think it benefits us, benefits them in the long run. The long run now for people is tomorrow. You know, I don't know if it benefits us for tomorrow. The long run, the Izzo factor is the season, or sometimes even, you know, a little bit more into their second season. So I'm happy with our schedule because I think we've played enough good teams, quality teams, little road game against a good team that is a tough place to play. But if you want what's best for freshmen, it'd be able to pivot pass and finish the line. You know, go out, not have any worries. You can win by 20 if you're not playing good and giving guys a chance. For subs, getting guys in, that was disappointing me the other day. We had some subs that I think deserved to play and didn't get to play as much. Marty's one of them that I think is starting to play better and better in practice because he's been on the scout team and it's helped him. But I don't know. The tough schedule, it's what I've done. I'm going to do it till I'm done. This year it's even better because of that tournament. But I don't know if it helps freshmen as much. They're so fragile now when they come out, freshmen in general around the country. I mean, I look at a lot of programs with those top freshmen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 80% of them are struggling.
How important is this team's depth going into the Big Ten season? You played 9, 10 guys most nights, and how do you see that benefiting the team?
Well, it's another thing that I think benefits me and the team in the long run. I don't think it benefits you in the short run. It's right now you're trying to get people to play together. You're constantly bringing people in, but injuries are going to happen. Things are going to go wrong. Foul trouble is going to happen. And that's when, being on the road or somebody's going to get sick really does benefit you. So it benefits the big picture. There's a lot of coaches that'll tell you this day and age, with everybody complaining about everything, that if you have 7 players and you could just play with 7, that's the best. To be very honest with you, that's what Minnesota has done right now. I don't agree with that, but it makes it easier on the coach. It makes it easier for the players to know that, what they're going to do. But I don't think it's beneficial in the long-term process of trying to be successful throughout the year and then into the tournament. So that's how I feel about that.
Anything else, guys? Any ladies?
You said you're gonna watch Nick Saturday. You haven't talked to him since, have you?
Yeah, I attacked him a little bit, and he big win for him. It was good. I did watch a little bit of the replay late that night. I was doing some work, and I turned on the TV, and the replay of that game was on. Incredible what he's done. I'm excited for us too. Being in the Peach Bowl, I think, is a good bowl. Ironically, going against another Michigan State guy in Narduzzi, with a great quarterback. So that's going to be a hell of a bowl in Atlanta. I think there's a lot of pluses. Should be a lot of excitement around here right now, and hopefully it'll continue. So, other than that, I didn't give him the scouting report on Cincinnati. Is that what you wanted to ask me? No. Okay. All right, guys. What's that?
Did you have a scouting report on Cincinnati?
I do. Coach D gave it to me. That's his job. Coach D gave it. Thanks. I keep seeing Dan walk in, and then I don't get to say hello to him. But he too has had a couple of good weekends.